This is a video about Wojak, whom you probably recognize as this bald MS Paint drawing. Wojak is the inspiration for countless redraws and edits, which are known as Wojaks, variants, or simply Jaks, although many may be inclined to simply write him off as just another meme. I can assure you that the history and lore of Wojak extends far deeper than most would think. This video is an attempt to chronicle the history of the Jakscape, if you will, from its inception in 2009 to today, as well as analyzing its importance on the internet and modern culture as a whole. Before we get started, please note that the information in this video is based on research, and I have done my best to ensure accuracy, but online events are not recorded very well, especially in the early timeline of this video. See the on-screen disclaimer for more details. With that said, please consider subscribing if you end up enjoying this video, and let's get started. The earliest known image of Wojak is in a comic dated to December 16, 2009. This gives us the latest possible date that Wojak could have been created. However, looking closely at this image, it becomes clear that this was not the original appearance of the character. The lines on Wojak are a different thickness than the rest of the drawing, suggesting that Wojak was pasted into the comic rather than drawn with the rest of the panel. So, where does the original image come from? Well, to find that out, we have to actually jump forward to 2012. When a Reddit AMA from a user named Wojak was posted, you might notice that the username Wojak is very similar to Wojak, and that's not a coincidence. Wojak was also apparently known as Wojak, and he is the reason for Wojak's name. For the sake of clarity though, I'm going to refer to the user as Wojak and the image as Wojak. Anyway, Wojak was a niche micro-celebrity on an old image board called Krautchan, which, as the name suggests, was essentially 4chan but for Germans. Although Wojak is named after Wojak, he was not the original creator. However, he does give 3 vital pieces of information about Wojak's origins. First, he states that he found the image on the Polish image board known as Vychan, after which he began reposting it on Krautchan, which is why the image was named after him. Second, the original image he found had the file name Ciepła twarz, which means warm face in Polish. This is at least partially confirmable, as the earliest archived picture of Wojak I was able to find on 4chan does have this file name. Third, Wojak claims that his name is because it is responding to the cool face, which is happy and shows approval. Unfortunately, both Vychan and Krautchan are now shut down, and there does not seem to be a working archive for either, which means that it is probably impossible to find the original Wojak post unless someone actually saved a picture of it. However, the information that Wojak provides is still very helpful. First, we can safely assume that Wojak comes from Poland, since it originated on a Polish image board with a file name in Polish. As for when Wojak was created, we still know it had to have been before December 2009. To narrow this time frame down, we have to consider Wojak's third piece of information, that the name Ciepła twarz, or warm face, is a sort of reverse of something called the cool face, which is happy, as opposed to Wojak's face, which is sad or blank. If we were able to figure out what the cool face is, it would make pinpointing the origin of Wojak much easier. Well, as it happens, I have a pretty good idea of what the cool face refers to, and it might just be the biggest reveal since The Empire Strikes Back. On December 1st, 2008, a comic was uploaded to ebombsworld.com in which a police officer pulls over a man, only for the man to put on his cool face, which turns out to be identical to a face from another comic made just a few months earlier, and which today is better known as the Trollface. Now, this may come off as somewhat of a shock, but I actually cleverly foreshadowed this in my video on the Trollface. Apparently, this caused the image to be known as the cool face for a relatively brief period of time. If you compare the Wojak and Trollface, you can definitely see a resemblance, especially by looking at the nose and forehead wrinkles. I'm not the first person to figure this out, but it still doesn't seem to be a well-known theory. Anyways, putting this together with Wojak's comments about the meaning of the name, it's pretty obvious that Wojak, or Ciepła twarz, was originally supposed to be someone's rendition of an unsmiling trollface. While we may not be able to find the original Wojak post, this information helps us piece together the backstory. Returning to the timeline with this information, we can limit our time frame to be between the date of Trollface's creation to the first known image of Wojak. We can narrow this down further if we account for the fact that the original file name for Wojak was Warm Face, directly based off of the Cool Face comic, thus meaning Wojak must have been created after this comic. So, the most conclusive timeline we can make for Wojak's creation is that it occurred somewhere in between December of 2008 and December of 2009. Anything more specific is speculation, but I would guess it happened towards the earlier part of 2009, since that is when the Trollface name was most popular. Without any screenshots or archives of the original ViChan post, this may be the closest we'll ever come to pinpointing Wojak's date of birth. For many years after its creation, Wojak was not actually known as Wojak, but rather as the Feels Guy. Feels is a term that popped up at some point in early to mid 2010, originating from a 4chan phrase, that feel when, or TFW for short. The phrase is rumored to have been spread by Wojak himself, paired with the Wojak image, which explains their association. While the expression, that feel when, can obviously be used to describe any emotion, it quickly became associated with feelings of loneliness and sadness on 4chan, with one of the most common variants, that feel when no GF, originating in late 2010. This is probably due to the fact that 4chan's primary demographic in 2010 was socially inactive single males. Wojak, presumably due to his wistful or melancholic expression, continued to be posted along these stories, serving as a representation of the poster's feelings. Although this was by far the most popular use of Wojak early on, the character did evolve a more uplifting side with this image and the associated phrase, "I know that feel bro." The image, which first appeared in early 2011, is the first notable variant of the original Wojak drawing that I am aware of. However, edits of the character representing different emotions continuously popped up even in 2011, such as this Drive theme version, and this version smoking a cigarette. This is likely a result of Wojak being drawn in the simplistic Rage Comics-esque MS Paint style, which makes it very easy for anyone with a computer to modify the image. Although most of these are completely irrelevant in terms of the larger history of Wojak, it does demonstrate that Wojak was always an extremely customizable format, even in the early parts of its existence. In 2013, there was a sudden uptick in new Wojak creations, which showed the meme evolving to show a wider range of emotions, crossing over with other memes, and even becoming front-facing. However, these early variants did not really escape 4chan, at least not for the moment. It wasn't until 2014 when Wojak would develop some of the variations we know today, such as the Crying Wojak, which I was able to trace as far back to February of that year. Due to the popularity of the Feels meme, the character would still be known mostly as the Feels Guy throughout the first 5 years of its existence. The name Wojak, from what I can tell, was primarily used to refer to Wojak rather than the meme itself, although the image would sometimes be called Wojak's face. This only began to change in mid-2014, when the character had a new surge in popularity due to a crossover/rivalry with Pepe the Frog. While Pepe probably deserves an entire video of its own, at this time he was basically associated with the phrase "feels bad man," and fulfilled a similar ecological niche to Wojak as a stand-in for the person posting it. The similarity between the two memes is probably why a feud formed between them, which later became known as Poo Poo Pee Pee. Wait a second, that can't be right. Anyways, during the Poo Poo Pee Pee feud, it seems some 4chan users became confused and began calling the bald MS Paint drawing Wojak. Despite the efforts of some users to correct them, the name began to catch on and surpassed Feels Guy as the name for the character. Another consequence of the Pepe x Wojak crossover was the creation of the Smug Wojak, which had two major variations that appeared in the first few days of August 2014, both of which were clearly based off the Smug Pepe meme. I will note that there is a version of one of the Smug Wojaks that significantly predates this, with the first appearance I could find being in December of 2013. However, it was not until the August 2014 version that it became popular. There is a strange absence of Wojak content all throughout 2015, which can possibly be attributed to Pepe being at its peak of popularity and thus superseding Wojak at the time. The most notable event was the creation of the Pink Wojak, which is like the Crying Wojak but more deranged. It actually first appeared wearing a Mario cap, which was later edited out. You can tell that this is the original because one of his forehead veins is layered over the Mario hat, which would not happen if the hat were simply added on top of the original Pink Wojak. This glasses-wearing Wojak was also posted alongside the phrase, "that feeling when too intelligent," which would spark the evolutionary arms race of the big brain Wojaks in the following year. In 2016, the Masked Wojak, which uses elements of the Smug and Crying Wojaks to represent someone who puts on a facade of superiority, was made. This would later become one of the most common Wojaks to see in memes. Later, in 2016, a post was made to the V, or Video Games board of 4chan, titled, "Are You an NPC?", which presented the theory that many people on Earth are in fact soulless, comparing them to non-player characters from video games. The post contents and date suggest that the user was referring to Democrats or left-leaning individuals, in reference to the polarizing 2016 US presidential election. While this post was not immediately relevant in terms of Wojak, it will become significant later on, so just keep it in mind for now. Around the middle of 2017, a new term began popping up in some niche communities. The soy boy, according to one definition submitted to Urban Dictionary, is slang to describe males who completely and utterly lack all necessary masculine qualities. The actual word is based on some dubious claims that soy products reduce masculinity due to them containing high amounts of phytoestrogens. The actual characteristics of a soy boy are somewhat vague, but one of the most well-known ones is exhibiting the soylent grin, which is an open-mouthed expression of excitement. Soy boys are also commonly associated with being vegan, having patchy facial hair, being an overall beta male or cuckold, and having an obsession with Nintendo products, superhero movies, and Funko Pops. In October of 2017, the media picked it up, giving it the title of the far right's favorite insult, which only served to further explode the popularity of the term overnight. It only took a few months for someone to create the first Soy Boy Wojak on December 30th, 2017. This Wojak, which uses the template of the original Wojak, but adds the iconic soy boy features of a patchy beard, open mouth, and glasses, became known as the Soyjak and heralded the beginning of a new era in Wojak history. Soyjak was the first major example of a Wojak representing the outsiders rather than standing in for the poster or a certain feeling. While Wojaks have been used to make fun of others before, with a good example being the brainlet variants that started appearing in early 2017, Soyjak was much more specific in its target. 2018 is probably the most complicated year of Wojak's history lore-wise. It gets a lot of criticism for introducing so many new characters, but I think that can be forgiven considering how the season brings together so many plot threads and pays off on teases from previous seasons. Coming into 2018, Soyjak had literally been created 2 days ago, and quickly began to spread and mutate into some of its basic variations, such as Crying Soyjak, Angry Closed Mouth Soyjak, and CalArt Smiling Soyjak. Additionally, this Trace Soyjak, which is based on the YouTuber James Universe's reaction to the Avengers Infinity War trailer, appeared in March of 2018. The original video is no longer public on YouTube, although the clip has been archived in the thread containing this Soyjak. As a side note, James's Universe also appears to be the original average fan from the Fan vs. Enjoyer meme, although that template uses a different image of him than his Soyjak does. The James's Universe Soyjak is the first of what would become known as the Trace Jacks, a brand of Soyjak that uses actual people as templates rather than the original Soyjak. Although it was created in early 2018, most of the other Trace Jacks would not appear until 2020 or later. Meanwhile, an entirely new line of Jacks was being manufactured, known as the Oomer Wojaks. The first was the 30-year-old Boomer Wojak in April, which modified a brainlet variant from 2017. By May, the Boomer had been refined to its final form by adding sunglasses and a Monster Energy drink. Oomer development continued through 2018, with the Zoomer, Doomer, and Coomer being some prominent examples. Interestingly, the Doomer's opposite, the Bloomer, as well as the Coomer, both use extremely old Wojak variants from 2013 as their bases. Each Oomer was also equipped with various text blurbs describing their personality traits, somewhat resembling the format of a starter pack meme. This made the Oomers more well-defined characters than earlier Wojaks and even the Soyjaks. While the Oomers often serve as the butt of the joke, they can also be portrayed as relatable. This role most often falls to the Doomer, presumably due to the fact that he most closely matches the traits of the people creating the memes. New Oomers continued to be made throughout 2019 and 2020, although most of the popular ones were created in 2018. In other Jack news, April 2018 also marked the creation of the Withered Wojak, which is essentially a doubling down of the original purpose of Wojak being posted alongside sad stories. In September of 2018, the topic of real-life NPCs began to surface again in multiple 4chan threads. Notably, this was once again right before an election period in the US, in this case the 2018 midterms. Although in this case the term was being used in a scientific way to describe people with no inner monologue, it quickly became repoliticized as an insult directed at left-wingers in the US who conformed to widely held beliefs. A gray-colored Wojak with a simplified face soon appeared as a representation of these people. The image and the term NPC quickly spread outside of 4chan, and within 1 week the term was being associated with fascists and the alt-right on Twitter. In early October, some news outlets began reporting on the phenomenon. However, the NPC Wojak truly hit the mainstream about a week later due to a mass raid on Twitter coordinated on the now-banned subreddit, The Donald. During this raid, thousands of troll accounts were created using variations of the NPC Wojak as profile pictures and acting as if they were Democrats. After many grueling days of combat, Twitter took drastic action on October 17th and banned over 1,500 NPC accounts. The results of this war gained the NPC Wojak massive attention from the media, including articles from the New York Times and BBC. Near the end of the month, the NPC Wojak was utilized by InfoWars as the subject of a competition to see who could make the best NPC-related meme. However, just like any great news story, the NPC meme vanished from the public eye as soon as the elections ended, with its only trace being the laziest meme template since Lisa's presentation. Although the NPC Wojak itself did not last very long, it did serve to bring Wojak to the front of everyone's minds. 2019 seems like a filler year compared to the years directly before and after, but there was still a fair amount of Jacktivity, such as the creation of a few trace jacks to foreshadow the horrors that would come in the following year. One of these was based on a frame of Tony Soprano from the TV show The Sopranos, thus fittingly becoming known as the Tony Soprano Soyjak. The second and most important trace jack of 2019 was based off a picture of the YouTuber Markiplier, whom you likely know from his Let's Plays of indie horror games such as Among Us. This Soyjak would later become well known for showing the viewer various things on his phone. Additionally, the smug Soyjak appears to have been created around May of 2019. Probably the most important event of 2019 was the introduction of the Yes Chad to the meme ecosystem in August. The Chad is technically an adopted Jack, since he originated from the completely separate meme format in 2016, but he quickly became a staple of the Wojak catalog after his first Wojak crossover, which is in a comic alongside a brainlet variant from 2017 known as Greyhounds. Commonly seen alongside the Chad is the Trad Girl Wojak, which was invented in July of 2019 and is the first notable female Wojak. However, both of the Trad Girl's ideological rivals in the Ethot and Daddy Wojaks would appear before the end of the year as well. 2020 is essentially the Wojak equivalent of the Cambrian explosion, with so many influential Wojak variants and templates being introduced that it's hard to keep track of them all. It is speculated that the global COVID-19 pandemic trapping people in their homes may have caused an uptick in Jacktivity, but this is unconfirmed. The first Wojak of 2020 was the Doomer Girl, who appeared in early January in an unusually wholesome comic along with the Doomer Wojak, which was then subverted into various other comics, including a headache-inducing thought chain format featuring this absolutely disgusting Wojak, who seems to come from 2019. The popularization of the Doomer Girl also led to the creation of my personal least favorite Wojak in the Femboy or E-Boy Wojak. This seems to have inspired other Wojak comics, as in the same month, the Dick Flattening meme was created using the Crushed Wojak, which seems to originate from early 2017. And in March, the Money Printer Go Burr meme featuring a Zoomer and the Boomer was made in response to economic conditions in the US at the time. Even the original Wojak comic from 2009 was resurrected in the form of the They Don't Know meme. In April, the Soyjak crossed over with the Yes Chad to create the Soyjak vs Chad meme, which might be the most popular single Wojak template ever created. The meme also of course spawned the argument-winning strategy of depicting oneself as the Chad and the opposition as the Soyjak, which vastly improved online discourse for years to come. Speaking of Soyjaks, the trace jack trend that started back in 2018 went absolutely insane in early 2020. The most random and insane things began to be traced and put into Soyjak form, including the Guinness World Record holder for largest mouth gape, 2 guys pointing at vegan chicken, and a random Jacksepticeye thumbnail. This last Soyjak in particular became well known for being aggressive, saying things such as "eat the bugs" and "you will X," usually commands relating to the COVID-19 restrictions that were in place at the time of his creation. This suggests that Feral Jack is a satirical commentary on the government response to the pandemic in 2020. A strange Soyjak named Chud Jack was created in August of 2020. This Jack was based off an earlier drawing known as the Trollface or Polak, named after Pol, the politics forum on 4chan. Chud Jack was originally intended to make fun of far-right incels, although it has since expanded to become a critique of anyone who is overly obsessed with politics in general. The explosion of new Soyjaks in 2020 prompted the creation of the Soyjak Wiki, which makes the Soyjak community strangely the most well-documented and organized area of Wojak history. The related board known as Soyjak.party is also responsible for possibly the most abominable Soyjak creation of all, Cobson, was created in 2021 and is a trace of a single frame of the 1992 sci-fi film The Lawnmower Man. At this point, Soyjaks had essentially speciated away from the rest of the Wojaks to become their own meme. However, the increase in the popularity of Soyjaks led to them losing their original themes of anti-consumerism and the loss of masculinity for a more simplified representation of whatever the person making the meme doesn't like. By the end of 2020, Wojak was at the absolute forefront of meme culture. The meme templates that came out of 2020 were extremely popular due to the ease of customizing them to fit a specific niche. Wojak had infiltrated almost every corner of the internet and became a medium of expression for thousands of communities. However, the creation of so many Wojaks and Soyjaks over the span of 2020 did not go without consequence. New Jaks continued to be made, but they became increasingly bizarre. At the beginning of 2021, an unknown user posted his new Wojak, known as Shroomjak, in what is presumed to be absurdist satire of the previous year's expansive Wojak catalog. This prompted other similar new Wojaks to be created, such as Bearjack, Fishjack, and Meowjack, a twisted half-breed of Feraljack and a cat. In 2022, the downward spiral would continue in the form of the Say the Line meme format, which seemed to satirize the previous wave of satire Wojaks by featuring one-off Wojaks such as Squirrel Jack, Ice Jack, and Frosted Sugar Cookie Jack, whose purpose seemed to solely consist of saying a single pun related to their names. While these weren't the most long-lasting or influential formats in the Jackdom, I find it funny that Wojak memes became so complex that there is an entire subsection of them that act as satire pieces for the format itself. One of the latest innovations in the Soyjak community came on March 2, 2022, in the form of the suspiciously shaped Soyjaks, which... Okay, you know what? I'm skipping this one. I don't think it requires much explanation. Around the same time as this, the NPC Wojak made a brief return with the "I support the current thing" meme, which basically was along the same lines as its original iteration. We have more or less arrived at the present day. There are now entire content creators that make animations solely in the Wojak art style, including the SoyTube Kids channel, which emerged in 2023. Wojak as a whole is basically the blank slate for modern memes, much as it was for 4chan originally. Wojaks can be used to represent any culture, express any viewpoint, and promote any ideology. Wojak at this point is more than a meme, and it's more than even an icon. I think it's honestly more appropriate to describe it as a genre, or even as its own art form. And that's pretty much it for the history of Wojak. It goes without saying that there are lots of Wojaks and templates that I had to leave out of this video. Probably thousands, but I hope I was able to cover the most important ones. On that note, if you made it this far into the video, drop your favorite Wojak variant in the comments section below. This is a new style of content for me, so if you did enjoy it, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.